Hey guys, welcome back to the Blue Collar Future podcast. I have Joel Mercado with me today.
How's how's it going, Jaden? How everything going well?
Good, yeah. Yeah, it's nice weather here. It's starting to cool down where we're at. So,
Yeah. You
yeah.
guys are you in Utah or where exactly are you located?
Yeah, northern Utah. So, it's been hot, but it's cooling down now and it's nice. It's nice. So,
Good, good.
yeah.
Nice.
So, Joel, let's get right into it. What do you do?
All right. It's quite eclectic. So I own painting companies. So I do have a painting company in San Diego, California, also in Arizona, and then a pest control business in Pennsylvania, and also have a marketing agency that pretty much hubs all of our businesses as well as taking care of outside businesses, of course, like new clients, and also have a coaching program. So pretty all around.
Oh, yeah. How did you get started into the painting? That sounds like what your almost main thing, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great question. My mentor, who's my business partner out here in California, I met him about 12 years ago, and I just kind of met him on the fly. So my wife worked for a chiropractic office, and he invested in this chiropractic office, and I was like, okay, well, how do I get into investments and
Yeah.
into entrepreneurship, And he said it was all painting. So I thought that was very interesting. I wasn't in the painting industry at the time. I was actually in the gym industry. So I did a lot of pre-sales and sales and training and things like that. But I thought it was interesting because I was seeing like his lifestyle, and I said, "Hey, like, can you teach me a little bit about what you know?" And he's like, "Well, it's all about coaching." And I thought that was interesting too because at that time we weren't really like right now you can see like all online everyone's talking about coaching and programs and stuff like that. But at that time I wasn't really exposed to anything like that. So he told me everything that I would learn through his mentorship would be through painting. So I thought that was interesting. Never painted before, never did anything towards that. And I was like, all right, sign me up. So he ended up relocating us from Arizona to San Diego and gave me the opportunity to get into painting. So it was a pretty interesting way to get into it.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah.
Did you just start off actually painting, or did you like start off running the business or what?
Yeah, he kind of threw me in the fire. So he put me in like a production manager, and I'm like, how do I be a production manager if I don't even know application or
Yeah.
I'm a numbers guy. So the business side of it came a little easier in terms of like the back end.
Yeah.
Um, but I relied heavily on my guys, like all my foremen and stuff. I had more of like leadership background and management background, but I had zero painting experience. So I kind of did it backwards, right? I started off as a production manager slash owner. We kept that kind of under wraps because we didn't want any of the employees to feel like, oh, how are you an owner if you don't know anything about painting?
Yeah.
So I worked more on like the leadership development for them and skills, but I had to learn the painting from them. So it wasn't until COVID, when COVID first happened, we actually downsized the company because kind of like everyone else, we kind of panicked, right? And because of that, I started painting. So then I was running my own crew. I started learning how to paint. I was very fortunate enough. We had an awesome paint rep from Dunn Edwards, who has like 30 plus years experience. And I just really started getting into learning. So, learning how to use specific machinery tips and all the terminology of the painting world, right? So after that, that's when things evolved in our company because I really started to understand the painting side of it, and I was able to tie them both in together. So
Yeah.
I'm glad I got to paint because then it would have been even harder for me.
Yeah, it is a little hard to be super heavily involved in something that you're not like 100% certain about, or not 100% knowledgeable about. I mean, and you never can know everything, but it's really nice to have that experience of how it is on the job every day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you said you have two locations then. So
Mm-hmm.
you guys have grown since then, since COVID. and expand?
Actually, it's that's another interesting fact, right? So our program, we look for other partnerships. So realistically, our coaching is to teach other entrepreneurs that are wanting to own a business and coaching them through painting. So same thing like our employees, we do the same thing. We teach our employees coaching. We don't just teach them painting. We teach them personal development. We teach them personal finances, how to increase their income, how to take care of their families, and we educate them through painting. So my other business in Phoenix is actually has nothing to do with this one here in California. It's a separate entity, and my goal is down the road in different states to continue opening other painting companies with other entrepreneurs that want to learn and teach them the blueprint of painting, but also that's the coaching, right? That's where the coaching program comes in, where we're giving them an opportunity, but we're also teaching them business while teaching them painting in a whole new trade.
Oh
So
wow.
it's definitely interesting.
Yeah, that's super interesting. That's a different twist on the whole coaching aspect. I know you said that you haven't really seen the coaching space before social media and all that. Because like, I mean,
Correct.
most people when you talk about hiring like a business coach or a life coach or something, it's like, what do you need that for? You know? Or
Right.
I mean,
Right.
even when people go get marriage counseling and they have a marriage coach, it's like, why do you need that? That's like the
Yep.
initial response. So the fact that the coaching space is um, blown up so much is, I think, due to social media, but like it's cool to see. It really is. So,
Yeah. It's
so
very
you
helpful.
guys, yeah, so you guys teach the employees too a lot about that space. You're basically you're coaching employees that way.
Yeah. So, our biggest deal is, it's one thing to I have great painters, right? So I've been very fortunate that we're really big about hiring off of integrity and character. That's really what we look for in employees. So whether you have a year or 15 years experience in painting, I could care less. It's more about the integrity they carry. And we really honed in on personality traits versus skill. We believe you can train skill, you can teach skill, you can teach painting, but it's very difficult to teach someone character or integrity. So our biggest outlook in finding the right people is about their character. So when we coach them, the biggest thing is I have guys that have had 15 years experience and they'll say, hey, Joel, I've never even learned why we use certain machines the way we do. Or they go, yeah, I just know I have to use a blue tip to spray. And I'm like, well, there's a science to this. Like, like, do you know what the fan width is and why there's an orifice in that size? And these are things they weren't educated on. And it simplifies their business. So the way I look at it is when I can educate them on why they're using the certain equipment and why there's certain things, like in our terms, like why is it flashing? Why are there these issues coming around? Well, it's because you're using this type of machine or your application's incorrect. So we coach them on that side, but then we go deeper. We ask them what their personal goals are because we want them to grow within the company. And I do have some painters I've been really proud of. They started their own painting companies because they've been educated through us.
Mm.
So we think there's plenty of abundance of work out there. We're not worried about that. We want to give what we've learned. So that's important to us.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. The more the employees know and the more they feel like that they can grow within the company, the better you're going to be. Even when lose these employees to go, they start their own thing. Imagine they have friends that are like them, or you attract people like that because people see that. So
Absolutely.
so how are you? You mentioned a little bit there that what you look for in employees. How are you kind of finding people like that and going through that process?
That's a great question. So it all started with have you ever read of the book, the Stephen Covey book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People?
Yep.
Um, that is like our principles. Like we really drive off of that. So we talk about, first things first, time management, things like that. That's all in that book that create these great habits. So we look for stuff like that. So, when you're talking about time management, what time did they show up to the interview? right? Do they show up on time? Do they show up 15 minutes early? Um, are they late? Do they reschedule 5 times? Like we look at that as a character first. The second thing is the way we look for our employees, we do kind of like referral bonuses. So I rather get, if I already know I have a great employee, well, they're not going to refer me someone that they don't think would do well in our company or wouldn't show up to make them look bad. So we actually incentivize our employees and actually pay them like a referral bonus for any friends and family that they refer to us. So it's less work for us to go look for more employees because they're doing pretty much the work for you. So we start with that internally. And then after that, we work with whether it's like Indeed or ZipRecruiter, we start with that. And then we go build relationships with the stores as well. So, like Dunn Edwards and Sherwin Williams, we know literally all the store managers, we know all the reps. So we really pride ourselves to make sure we have those relationships. So they're constantly pumping us like, oh, you want to work for them. They pretty much are our cheerleaders. So that it makes it easier for us to really find great employees.
Yeah, that sounds a lot like, I mean, the entire process outline almost sounds like looking for leads for business. So,
Yes.
so I actually had someone on the podcast that said that I don't remember if they said it on the podcast or outside of it, but they talked along those lines. They said that they market for employees like they market for leads for their business. So, I mean, referral bonus, making relationships with people around you in the industry, and all of that sort of thing. I mean, it's all tied in together, and then using Indeed for all of that. I know a lot of people have a hard time finding help, and it's not that it's not there. I think a lot of people just don't know exactly how to find the guys.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
that's one thing that pops up a lot. So I almost want to put more emphasis on that now, because it's like how like there's so many pitfalls that people fall in when they're hiring people, and then how they're dealing with their employees too, that they don't want to stay and they don't feel comfortable. So I mean, the growth in the company is a big reason why people would want to stay too.
Yep.
So the So how do you else do you incentivize your employees then? So I'm imagining you have some sort of outline, so like your coaching program that
Yeah.
you like almost a curriculum for your employees on the job.
Yeah, that's well said. Yeah. So it's not really in writing, right? But
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, it's almost like a universal language, right? Like you and I speak English, right? But sometimes we don't understand each other because we don't understand behaviors or anything like that. So we talk about like effective listening, where 80% of your listening is body language, 10% are the words that are people are literally saying, the other 10% could be the sounds, right? So even teaching them what effective listening sounds like, what it really is, so that they feel comfortable. Because you got to remember, you're in the contracting world. Like most these managers also have never been managed properly or trained properly, so they treat their employees bad. So then we get these wounded employees, and it's like first we got to build their confidence back up and understand that hey, this is a win-win situation. We're not here to be like any other guys. We already know going into it, they already have that in the back of their mind that they're like, hey, all painting companies are like this, all contractors are like this because they've been mistreated. That doesn't necessarily mean that's true. They're just in the wrong company. And what we want to do is change their paradigm. We want to make sure that they understand we're going to take care of you, but it needs to be a win-win. So our philosophy is take care of your painters take care of your customers take care of you. So we're not about like, oh, the customer is always right. We really involve ourselves in our employees. Our employees are number one. So when you focus on that with our program as well, is like learning those behaviors. Okay, let's teach you better time management. Let's teach you how to understand to talk to a customer. Let's build that confidence up for you guys. And then giving them, like I said, universal language, we have a thing, it's called Duragi, and this works for any industry. So I want to share that with you guys.
Yeah.
Duragi means demonstrate, observe, redemonstrate, assign a task, set a goal, and then inspect. So um, we teach every single leader that acronym. And we say, hey, did you do Duragi with your new helpers? Oh, you know what, boss, I forgot. Or, it's a language that we all understand that can be retaught versus saying, hey, did you try doing this? Hey, did you try doing that? It gets really complicated because there's no set system for them to understand. So we have acronyms like Duragi or the 5 Ps. So we talk about proper preparation prevents poor performance. So we speak that language constantly, weekly, and it allows them to say the same things that we're saying. And then we're able to guide them if there's any kind of frustrations on the training aspect of things.
Yeah, well, I mean, having that system in place is really, I think, what makes the difference. A lot of people are running ragged, running dry, don't really have like the bandwidth, I think, to set something like that in place. So having having access to that information, I think, is going to help a lot of people really, because without you, I mean, without employees, you can't do anything. And a lot of people have really bad experiences working for someone just because, they may have been an asshole, or they may have been mistreated, or had a bad situation. And it's like almost this story that now all of a sudden, yeah, like you said, all contractors are like it. Like they're just think that because that's what happened to them, but it's not necessarily the case. So
Correct.
that's another problem you run into is you do get employees that are damaged like by other people. And even if you don't have this system in place and you're still pretty good with your people, like something will happen on a job site one day, and it'll just blow up, way worse than what it was supposed to be, because this person thinks that you're personally attacking them.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes down to miscommunication. So
Yep.
the miscommunication is huge. So you said that works in any industry. Are you involved with that in the pest control side of the business?
Yeah. So, a lot of people don't understand is like they ask me, how are you able to run multiple businesses in different states and still be, because I'm boots on the ground out here. So I don't just sit at home and hang out all day, right? Like I still check job sites. I still make sure everybody's doing well. I've been fortunate enough to train a really awesome production manager who works with me as well. And I've been teaching him the coaching program, right? So like my job has just been so high focused on him so that he can be at the job sites and be my right hand, right? So I'm not at the job sites every day like I used to be, but I'm still checking in, making sure everybody's morale is really good and stuff like that. But when it comes to like the pest control and the out of state businesses, I meet with every single management team every single Monday at set times. So we don't skip meetings. It's always training every single week on the dot. We have a type process where we do EODs, which means end of day stats. I know what's going on at all times because we have a very big systematic process where I see the numbers on each business each day and I can predict how well everyone's doing. So if I have to make a change, it's immediate. It's not one of those like, oh, we did a horrible first quarter. Like I know that day and I make a change that night. So if it's something that needs to happen, immediately I'm like, hey guys, we need to change this for tomorrow. I don't wait, right?
Mm.
And that's where we change the trajectory of all these businesses. And to go back to your question about like using Duragi in the pest control, the reason why it's functional is because we're all speaking the same language. So I can literally grab someone from the leadership team from pest control and put them in the painting. And it's really no difference because it's all about behavioral coaching and just making sure everyone's following a process. So that's the fun part of it is they may not have the product knowledge, but when it comes to the leadership side, they can immediately problem solve for someone. And that's more important than them knowing the product at that time.
Yeah, no, it really is. I think a lot of frustrations happen with employees and their managers is a lot of times the managers won't really know what's going on, but they aren't communicating this way. They're just getting mad. Like,
Yes.
how come this isn't right? How come you're not doing this right? Like, why, and if they do know, it's even worse, and they're just getting mad for no reason. And it like creates this disconnect with all of the employees, and grumbling and complaining and all of that. So, what would you say is the most important thing to do for a small company, you know, a self-employed person with employees, or maybe even an employee working somewhere like this, to start to make a change? Because nothing implemented like this, and start to do that.
So if I understand you correctly, like the question's primarily what would I suggest for like a smaller company that needs to get to a certain level with that internally,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
okay. So I do, like I said before, I do believe highly in coaching because I didn't know any of this stuff. I'm doing 20 years worth of knowledge that was crammed into me. So I've learned from other managers and different leaders in different industries. But until I found my mentor that I have now, that's my partner out here, I didn't learn any of this stuff unless it was through him. So he gave me 20 years of blueprint and data and crammed it into me in these last 11 years. He's just been teaching and teaching and teaching. So I truly don't believe that I could have been able to accomplish what I've accomplished already. I think at some time I probably would have hired someone at some point due to frustration, but I'm regurgitating 20 years of knowledge that was given to me. So I didn't create this. I'm just following, and
Yeah.
I know it works, right?
Yeah.
So I would highly suggest someone that's trying to. I know it can become expensive, and I've been there, right? I had a different business a long time ago in a world that I've never been in, and I was like, what am I doing? Why did I get involved in this? And I didn't have any kind of help or support. And if I had coaching then, I would have invested whatever it took to make sure I was set up for success. Because in our world, we say 1 + 1 = 3. So when we say that, it's the same thing on the referrals, right? When you get someone, you do a great job, someone else is going to refer you. So that one lead that you paid for turn into 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And we believe in that in coaching as well. That if you have a coach who's going to tell you something and teach you something, yeah, you might have spent 1,000, let's say $1,000. Well, you're going to make 5 grand easily off that, or
Mhm.
whatever industry you're in, right? It will multiply based off what you've learned, in that curve shortens, right? Versus bleeding and bleeding out money and losing employees, because that's an opportunity cost right there. Where, if I invest into an employee for a year and they leave our company, think about how much time and resources we just spent in them. That hurts the business. So we want to make sure that we keep the best high retention as possible. And I suggest that for anyone that's just starting out or only has a few employees, is to invest in someone that's in your industry who's already done it and seen success in that, to get their blueprint, because it'll be a lot better. And I always say in your industry, because I've been approached too, where guys are asking me like, hey, can you do drop ship? Can you teach me how to do drop ship? I'm like, no, I don't do that.
Yeah.
So why would I coach you on something I don't know?
Yeah. Well,
So
there seems to be a lot of coaches around that are trying to act like they know a lot about all these industries, instead of just sticking to, you know,
what they know.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
maybe that's hurting the coaching space too, because so many people are feeling disenfranchised with, like, oh, well, I mean, this person doesn't even know what the heck they're talking about. So
Yeah.
I actually had a conversation with my wife the other day about how there's a lot of coaches online that are always talking about getting shit done and being on top of things. And like, we've had some people, reach out to us that don't really follow through with anything, and they're acting like that. And it's like, not this like preaching it, but they don't follow it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's most businesses too, right? That's that facade that they want to show success, right? And whatever that means to them. But for us, we want to make sure that the success is whatever your goals are, right? And
Yeah.
and giving that what we know based off of what we know and what we've seen success in. So that's important to identify and
Yeah.
and be careful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On my last podcast interview, we talked a lot about um, being happy and finding your purpose in money, because a lot of people find their purpose in chasing money, and it's always more, it's always getting more, it's always doing more, and like, but the money isn't what makes you happy. So it's maybe a little bit different turn, but kind of what are some of your thoughts on that? 'Cause it's just been something that's
Yeah.
been mulling over in my mind for, you know, the last few days.
Like you asked that question because when I got in this business, I saw the external results of my mentor. Like he's a multimillionaire. Like I was like, I want to be that. I want to see that. I want to live like that. And I didn't realize that it wasn't because of painting.
Yeah.
It was because of real estate, but painting was a stepping stone to his success. And when I got involved with painting, I did not like it at all. I was frustrated. I thought the coaching program would be more of like, you see the fancy stuff. I literally just posted this the other day. I was like, hey, I'm going to coach you. I'm going to show you my successes and things that I've won in, but I'm not going to be showing, fancy cars and all this extra stuff because I'm not into that. I'm going to show you practicality. I'm going to show you what works. And success isn't always monetary. So success can be that you are able to own a business that gives you more time for your family because your family means more to you. That's cool, right? If that's what that is, I can show you that, right? Success can be monetary if that's what you want, but don't fall in love with the money, fall in love with the process. And what really got me to really fall in love with the process in painting is when I started seeing my team winning.
Mhm.
When I started seeing everyone winning in the organization, I was like, all right, this is awesome. Like, my partner always tells me, he's like, hey, man, there's nothing sexy about painting. Like, when people are like, hey, what do you do for a living? We're like, we're painters. They're like, oh, okay, right? So, he always says there's nothing sexy about painting. But look at what we're able to do to change lives on a daily basis internally. And that's more fulfilling for me. And when I saw that this has been able to give me the pathway to teach others and have them be successful in their goals, and I'm able to give that to them, that became more rewarding to me. And the funny fact is, the more that became rewarding, the more money came
Yeah.
naturally.
Yeah.
And I almost stopped focusing about the money, that I focused on the internal things, and everything else started coming. And that if I can give that advice, I would say fall in love with the process and fall in love with what you can do to maximize the internal things, and it'll naturally just come. It really
Yeah.
will.
Yeah. Well, being being on top of what you're doing and finding purpose in what you do, like whatever it is, like you can fall in love with the process because it makes you money, because so that you can provide for your family and maybe so you have freedom, whatever. But
Yep.
I do notice there's such a pitfall in the, so I mean, social media, like you said, I'm not going to show you these fancy cars and all of that. A lot of these people are showing their success as, I have all these vehicles, I have this house, I have this stuff, but I'm more interested to see a happy family, or like a well-run company with employees that have buy-in, that are like
Yes.
into what they that are into what they are doing, like are happy,
Yep.
because the money isn't what makes you happy. I mean, it can lead to it, and it's that funny saying, that money doesn't buy you happiness, but it can buy you a boat. Like,
Yeah.
but it's just missing the point, because it's still not it. It's like the money can create the experiences and stuff, but you have to have everything in order before that. So
Absolutely.
I mean, one thing we talked about, and I'm going off my last interview because it's been on my mind forever, is like having your relationships in order. Um, so your relationship with your wife is like paramount in everything you do, and a lot of people
Yes.
don't have that on um, don't have that in line because they're so focused on everything else. And I guess what I would say, ask is, how have you been intentional about building that relationship while having to be involved in all of these things, or while being involved in all this?
I'm glad you asked that because I feel like that's a subject a lot of people don't talk about, right? Um, So I've been with it's crazy to say this, but I've been with my wife 14 years and we just got married this April.
Wow. Wow.
So yeah, and I love when this question gets asked to me because it wasn't until like I want to say 3 years ago was it until things started shifting more in our relationship. And she was amazing throughout these 14 years. She's a great communicator. She's awesome at communicating. And like most men, I wasn't, right.
Yeah.
Like I was always closed off. I didn't really talk about my emotions. I looked at that as a weakness, just kind of how I was brought up as a child, right. And until I started seeing a therapist, this was very important. I love sharing this, right? Because I started seeing a therapist about 4 years ago because of certain things that happened in my youth. Um, until I started changing my behaviors and being very specific to my habits, wasn't until I can give back to my relationships, and one of them being my spouse, right? My relationship now with my wife is the best it's ever been in the last 14 years. And it gets better and better and better. And the reason why it gets better is because we intentionally do scheduled date nights. So last night we just had a date night by Del Mar in the ocean, right? Like we're very specific about that. And I block that time so she knows that I am 120% attentive to her and her needs, our time, and that I'm going to be there for her at those times, right? And because she knows I'm a workhorse, I like to work. It's just how I operate. I work crazy hours, crazy days. I don't really have a schedule. I just work. I'm like, yep, let's throw it at me.
Mhm.
But until I started intentionally saying, here's our time together. And then I tell my team, hey, just, from this time to this time, I'm unavailable. My time is going to be with my wife. And they all respect it. They all go, no, yes, please. Because they know I'm attentive to them as well. Because again, I said, be very attentive, intentional with all your relationships. So my employees, I have a relationship with every single one of them. So they understand that as much as I give them their time, and I'll use this as an example. Yesterday, I had an employee have a concern, and my phone just kept ringing, and I would just keep muting it. They're like, "You can take that call." It's like, no, I'm in front of you. They
Yeah.
can wait. I will talk to them when we're done discussing this issue. And there's a level of respect that you earn because you're giving them the attention that they need. You're not just another company that's just busy. They pay attention to that, as well as if you have kids. I have two dogs, that's it. But
Yeah.
if you're in a marriage, your kids are watching you, your wife is watching you. And I think we have to hold a position where, just as we are as good as that in the business, you have to be like that at home. And I've been very appreciative to my wife. She taught me that, right?
Yeah.
And until I shifted that and give that time, she then respected it and gave me that time to work my crazy hours. She's like, I know you do that, and but I do need time. And when I started seeing that and understanding it, I was like, huh, she's not asking for 80 hours a week. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah. No,
it's
she
just
just,
that bit of time.
yeah, the intentional time. I will
Yeah.
add that the date night, I think, can be super important, but it has to be done with intention
Yes.
because I see a lot of people preach the date night thing and oh, our relationship's so good, we do the date night and they end up not together, like having a bunch of problems. And but like it becomes this thing that's like a check the box instead of, like you said, like being intentional, being all there, um and actually following through. And instead of just being like, yeah, it's date night, and the let's get this over with or whatever. And
I look at it as I'm redating her every single date night. Like I'm taking her out for the first time again.
yeah,
Like I'm courting her. So just so you know, like that's how I look at it. And that's what I think is the difference.
yeah, no, it is. And I think a lot of people get this idea that it needs to be something grandiose. But it really is just being about being intentional. And you can't be successful in your business past a certain point if you're not don't have that um, under wraps. If you don't have that, like, completely in line, because something at home that's causing a problem, like, a relationship with your spouse, is going to permeate into everything else. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's such an important thing. And the more I think about it, the more I realize how many people have problems with that, because I think it's hard to see um an immediate return, let's say return on your investment. um Something I've been thinking about is, it is really hard to it's really easy to see, okay, I do this in my business, I get this back. It's not
Yep.
as easy to see, I do this in my relationship, I get this back. Not always.
Right.
So that being intentional, I think, is one of the most important things to do, and communication. So, I mean, I think you could even apply your communication tactics in your business to you know, to your relationship with your spouse.
Even more, yes.
Yeah.
You have to be that much more intentional.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, to not make it sound, so, I don't know, like a business, but it is almost, and people need to start treating it like that, like treating it um more intentional, more energy, because the more energy you put into your relationships, the more everything else, everything else comes into line.
Absolutely. Can I share something to that? What we
Yeah,
call that?
sure.
So, um, I know it sounds kind of weird. Like my wife knows if you talk to me in business, I understand it better. So
Yeah.
she knows like that's my language. Like you got to talk to me in numbers or scenarios like a business for me to have like layman's terms. I know it sounds weird, but I'm in that world so much that that's just how I operate. And when I started communicating better with her is when I was able to apply those business, I wouldn't say tactics, but tools, right? Into my relationship. That's when things got better, right? Like effective listening, we talk about um gosh, there's a phrase that they say is I'll get back to you on that one, but
Yeah.
there's also an emotional bank account, right? We talk about how many deposits are you giving to your employees. So why is that any different to your relationship with your wife? How many deposits are you giving to your wife? Like, are you constantly withdrawing like a bank account, or are you fulfilling that relationship and giving her things that she's not asking? It could just be as simple as, you guys spent a little bit of time. That's a deposit. It could be as simple as just checking in on her and seeing where her space is. That's a deposit. So I focus more on deposits than withdrawals. I don't like asking for favors or taking away from that, because when someone's withdrawn enough, eventually that's where that breaking point happens. And that's why we talk about that again, like see how they both work with the employees too. We don't just go, hey, can you do me a favor? Can you work 2 more hours today? Hey, can you do me a favor? Come back in on Saturday and work another 8 hour shift. Hey, can you do me a favor? Like all I'm doing is just taking and taking and taking. And they go, hey, I'm exhausted, boss. Like enough's enough. And I think that goes the same with the spouse, right? Like hey, can you do me a favor? Pick this up. Hey, do you mind doing the laundry? Hey, do you mind washing the dishes? Hey, do you mind doing this for me? Hey, do you mind doing that for me? It's like, where's the deposits? And I think that's where some of those relationships fail. They forget that this is a mutual thing. It's a mutual relationship, and you have to meet halfway in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll add to that you can't do those deposits without being right yourself. So many people are giving all of themselves to their businesses, to their family, but not doing anything for themselves, for their enjoyment.
Yes,
Um, like, whether that's, I mean, I always tell people to exercise and work out, because that's one of the best ways you can um, edify yourself. But like, this personal development and coaching space is the same too. Like, take time for yourself so that you can have time for people around you.
absolutely.
That's, I mean, you get down this rabbit hole and everything comes back to the same thing. Everything ties in together. And I think what happens with a lot of people, and why there's so many problems, is so many people are stretched thin in places that they aren't putting enough work in, and it affects everything. I mean, you can have the strongest business out there, and the most well-built business, I guess I should say. I mean, the best organized, whatever. But if your family life is terrible, you don't give any time to them, no attention, like that's a constant drain on your on you. That's a constant drain. And you can't perform like that. So it's anyways, it's a long, we could go on that
Yeah,
go
well,
over
yeah,
that
we keep
forever.
going down that one.
Oh my.
Yeah.
So I think what is coming up for you in the future? What are you doing next?
Just like, not to bring up personal development again, but at the end of the day, we as people in general, we suffer, right? We suffer from a lack of understanding. So I've really have obsessively worked on wanting to help people. So, and that's been pretty much my life work. When I say that, I'm very passionate about seeing people win. So, my goal is to have, because when I first started my first business, I didn't have any help. And I really failed miserably, which was awesome because it really pushed me to the trajectory of where I'm at, where it's like, I don't ever want to hear or see anyone fail like that. So I really want to consult and teach other business owners how to create an internal process to win and succeed for their employees by coaching and teaching them how to communicate better, which is really the personal development space. It really is, because if you can't lead yourself, you can't lead others.
Yeah.
So I want to finish creating a program, which I've been working with the program we have, but adding to is to be able to do this with all different types of contractors, different types of businesses, and I'll still be owning other companies, right? But I really want to get into more of the coaching and consulting side of it to help others win. So that's my biggest goal.
So where can people go to find more about this?
Yeah, so right now on my Instagram, it's I forget if it's Joel Mercado official or official Joel Mercado, but you can check me out on Instagram. Don't do many posts anymore. It's more stories because my website's being built right now. The program's called MVP, which means Maven program. So it's really going to be part of pushing you, right? So it's more of the person, the leader, being the MVP of the business, giving them the tools so that they can give the rest of the team the tools. So that's being built right now as we speak. So I'm really excited about that. So I've been kind of holding off on the posts, but you can find me on like Threads and Instagram.
Yeah.
I'm constantly posting stories and quotes just to keep people motivated and inspired. So that's a fun thing.
It's a good thing to chase, helping people
Yes.
rather than
Yes.
money. We
That's
discussed.
true. Yeah.
Well, Joel, thanks for coming on. I hope everybody got as much out of this as I did. So
Hey, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. It was a
yeah,
pleasure,
yeah.
man.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.